What is going on, everybody? So for those of you who are not familiar with my videos, I do aquarium service for a company called Technicians, and I'm on the job right now, and I'm about to go into a customer's house who's been dealing with some green hair algae issues. Now this tank has been up for a long time, and suddenly just got a bloom of green hair algae, and that's because the tank is well stocked and there's a lot of fish in there. But I'm here now because I wanted to show you guys how they got rid of their hair algae by just selecting the right fish and the right members of the cleanup crew. But first, I want to share with you guys my personal favorite member of the cleanup crew. So let's get into it.
Now, when it comes to adding cleanup crew to your tank, I'm a big proponent of the tuxedo urchin, and there's a ton of reasons. So let me get into it. Number one, they do an amazing job of working the rockscape, grazing. They don't stop grazing, they continuously graze on the rockwork. And what that means is any growth that's on that rock, any hair algae that's going to start to try to grow, they will be on top of it. So if you have a tank and you got some rock work and you're starting to see some green showing up, get a tuxedo urchin. They will definitely take care of it quickly. But not only algae that are just showing up on the rock, they do an amazing job on hair algae, longer algae that are more difficult to get to. The other thing I love about them is that they're aquacultured, which means they're bred in captivity, which is kind of cool because you're not taking something out of the ocean. That's always a benefit. Also because, they potentially aren't exposed to, fish disease and things like that. The other big benefit of having urchins as opposed to other cleanup crew, say like, Mexican turbo snails, Astorina snails, emerald crabs, hermit crabs, and things like that, is not only do I think they do a better job grazing the tank, and they move pretty quick. I think they move probably a little bit quicker than snails do in a lot of ways, but they also you're not gonna have to worry about contaminating your tank. And what I mean by that is you're not gonna worry about things like hydroids and aptasia getting into your tank, because when you have crabs and when you have snails, those hydroids and aptasias and other pests can attach themselves to those snails or to the crab shell or to the snail shells, and that can get into your tank and contaminate your tank and cause a problem for you, a major problem for you long term. With urchins, you don't have to worry about that. As long as you pick off the little stuff that they put on top of them, the rocks or corals or whatever bits they have on top of them, you're gonna have a clean, safe invert to put in your tank, which is a huge benefit, because with snails and with crabs, you might have to quarantine them so you don't get any, unwanted pests in your tank. With urchins, you don't have to do that. And a tuxedo urchin is 100% reef safe. And I just want to show you guys here in this tank right here, if you take a look, you can see to the left and to the right, there's algae. That middle part is where the urchin was hanging out. That's where he grazed. So look at the difference between that. To the left there is where the urchin was. The middle part is where he hasn't gotten to yet. The right is where he was. And that right there where all that hair algae is, he hasn't gotten to yet. That's how good of a job those urchins do. Look at that, completely clean. So anyone who says they don't do a good job on hair algae, look at that. That's long algae, and he took care of that, no problem. I love these guys, highly recommend them. I put them in all our customers' tanks, especially tanks that are just, about 4 months old, that are starting to get higher nutrient levels and don't have enough, they're not balanced yet and they're starting to get a little green on the rock. I throw these guys in there and try to stay on top of your algae issues. All right, so here's the customer's tank, and you guys can get a pretty good idea of how much algae is in this aquarium. Now, this is not the worst case of hair algae I've ever seen, but it's a decent amount. It's definitely manageable. The reason why there's so much hair algae in this aquarium is because there's a pretty big bioload in this tank. There's a lot of fish, they're decent sized fish, and they produce a lot of waste. And there's not that much coral, there's not that much cleanup crew in here as of yet to kind of consume those extra nutrients. So it's kind of being turned into the hair algae. So, which is not bad, because the hair algae, technically is keeping the water clean because it's consuming those excess nutrients and fish waste. But it is unsightly, and we want to get rid of it on this service. So we're going to go ahead, and I just want you to get a good look at, there's hair algae pretty much in every square inch of this rock work. And I want to get a good idea of what this tank looks like now so we can go and see our progress throughout this service. Now, if you look at the sand is actually really clean. The hair algae is contained to the rock, so that's a good sign. Now, we're not here at this tank a lot. I haven't been in this tank in a long time, so I want to do a really good service on it today, give it a good scrub, and do the best we can to kind of get some of this algae under control. So I'm going to go ahead and start by taking this grout brush and just scrubbing as much of this hair algae off as possible. Now, I'm trying to see how easy this hair algae comes off. If it comes off pretty easy, that means it might be dying, but it's on there pretty good. So I just want to scrub as much of this rock surface as I possibly can, make it difficult for the hair algae, and just scrub, get in all the little crevices where detritus might be, get the water as dirty as possible so that we can do a water change and suck all this stuff out. And now that we got everything kind of cloudy and in the water column, I'm gonna go ahead and start. You can see all the algae floating there in the water column. I'm gonna go ahead and do a decent sized water change and suck out as much of this hair algae as possible, but we gave the rocks a pretty good scrubbing, and I'm going to continue to scrub, but I'm gonna add the water change now. So we got the water change going. I'm gonna take it down about 50%, but while I'm doing that, I'm gonna continue to scrub and continue to try to get as much algae in the water column as possible. But I think a 50% water change today is probably about where I'm gonna leave it. I don't want the tank to become too unbalanced. Now, as I'm pumping in, I'm gonna take this fish net and just scoop out as much hair algae as I possibly can. Any hair algae that's left in this aquarium will die and just add to the nutrient level in the aquarium. So we wanna get the hair algae out. All right, so we're all done with the service for today, but we're just gonna go ahead and take a look at our work. And I think the tank looks pretty good. I definitely recommend some cleanup crew to stay on top of the algae now that we scrubbed it. And we recently put these anemones in there, and I love how the clownfish has just made them her home. That looks so cool, man. That's really awesome. But yeah, now that we did that, really thorough rock scrubbing, anytime you do any type of rock scrubbing and you get that algae off the rocks or it's very low, it's a good time to get cleanup crew on there, because while that algae is low, the cleanup crew seem to be a little bit more effective than when the hair algae is long. And plus, we got some grazing fish in here, so if they do their job, it'll be tough for the algae to kind of grow back as long as it was before. All right, so this is what the tank looks like now. This is a couple weeks after our last service, and I have to say, the tank looks pretty good. I honestly was expecting to see a lot more algae, but this is awesome. This is unexpected. So now if we take a look, you can see all the algae is gone off the rocks. There's a little bit of fuzziness, but it's not nearly as bad as it was before. And this has been taken care of pretty much naturally. The tank just kind of found itself and became balanced. And the algae just started to dissipate. It's really starting to come off the rocks. There's still a little bit of fuzziness there, but most of it's gone. You saw some bubble algae. The nutrients are still really high in this aquarium, but the tank is kind of coming to a balance. It's taken a turn, and I haven't been here in a bit, so it hasn't gotten a water change since the last time I did it. The water change definitely didn't do this. This most likely has come from just the tank balancing out and the fact that they did get some urchins. A couple of urchins. There's one there who's got a bunch of snails pinned to him. And they also have an addition. They have a fox face that they just recently got. They have a lot of grazing fish, which helps keep the algae in check. But the fox face, if I can see that, we know there's some angelfish and things like that, tangs, that are probably doing some grazing. And they recently got a fox face, which is hiding right now, which probably contributed to some of that algae being taken care of. But honestly, I think it has a lot to do with the tank just balancing out, which that fox face is hiding in there in that cave to the right of that trigger.
Now I'm really happy the way the aquarium looks. I'm actually shocked. I did not expect to come in and see that all that algae was gone, because there was a decent amount of it. And I would not have been surprised if that algae would have gotten worse by that next visit. But the fact that the customer went and got a fox face and went and got some cleanup crew was a really smart move on their part. And after that brushing, that fox face and those urchins were able to stay on top of that algae, preventing it from growing back. And smart move on their part. And you know what? That's a big win. So I'm happy, customer's happy, I'm happy, the tank looks great. That's awesome, man. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one.